Join us, Alex
and Colleen,
self-proclaimed fake it till you make it experts, as we navigate the highs and lows of being a woman and how the pressure and overwhelm of trying to do it all often leads to feeling like an imposter in our own lives.
In our recent live recording, we had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Ashley Margeson, a naturopathic doctor and specialist in burnout and women's health. Our discussion centered around the connection between burnout and imposter syndrome, as well as the significance of educating ourselves about health for improved confidence and overall well-being.
I want to start by introducing Dr. Ashley Margeson. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dr. Ashley before we get into asking a couple of questions. So, an entrepreneur, naturopathic doctor, and questioner with an unshakable thirst for diving deep in helping others become who they're meant to be.
That sounds good.
That's good, eh? Ashley is full-time stepmom to Caleb and Elise, dog mom to Loki, and shares it all, including the business Cornerstone Naturopathic, with her partner Ben, who's also just as lovely as she is. Yeah, super kind. Born and raised on the East Coast, Dr. Ash is an obsessive learner and graduate of Acadia University.
Yes.
Yes. Who spends time reading, researching, and hosting the Superwoman Code podcast, creating individualized health programs for her patients, and supporting high-functioning women in accomplishing their goals as healthily as possible. Dr. Ashley considers the ability to sleep to be her most important superpower. Who's with her on that one?
Yes.
Yeah. Who had a good night's sleep last night? Oh, look at those people.
Yeah.
Mm.
We slept in this.
I'm impressed.
That was good. That's awesome.
So welcome, Dr.
Hi.
Ashley.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Hey, yeah.
Okay.
We're so yeah, we're so glad you joined us. I want you to tell us a little bit about your journey in naturopathic medicine and how you became passionate about women's health.
So like, do you want the short story or the long story?
Oh, we've got an hour. Can you guys hear in the back?
Pretty good.
You're
Hey.
good? Okay.
Mhm.
So
I have Cape Breton blood, so I can project and talk very quickly. So I grew up my entire life. I just wanted to be a family doctor. I was like, I grew up in like rural parts of HRM, spent my summers down on the South Shore, which is like a beautiful way to kind of imagine this idyllic childhood. And I was like, I just want to be a family doctor. I was like, I just want to be a family doctor. I want to practice preventative medicine. I think that when people are healthy, they can literally change the world. And I was like, and I think that people need to learn their own bodies and be taught that skill, because I firmly believe that understanding what is healthy for your body is a skill that we are supposed to learn through our life, and a skill that changes as we change in our life. And then I did my undergrad in nutrition and dietetics at Acadia and started to have this interesting conversation with myself when I was writing the MCATs, and then came in one score too low to apply to Dow, like 1 point. And I was like, okay, Ashley, have a moment. What's something that you want to try and learn? What's something that could teach you something? What's something that at least you would go, well, like, why the hell not? I tried. And I had a boyfriend at the time, an ex-boyfriend now. His mom was like, have you considered naturopathic medicine? And I was like, that's like voodoo shit. Right? And I was like, that's literally what that is. And then I started to like research, because I grew up, like, my mom's a teacher, my dad's an engineer. So like I was taught from a very early on that you are supposed to question your own assumptions. Like, right? Like, we all get assumptions. We all start with an assumption. And then like, that is one of the things that I think my parents taught me incredibly well, is like, question your assumptions. Like, the assumptions are fine, but go and question them. So then I was like, well, okay, fine. Now I need to question this assumption, and realized that it actually probably aligned more with what I was looking for than what the idea of medicine is today. And I was like, anybody that's ever had a chance to work with me, or that I've had the honor of being able to work with, will kind of like hopefully say the same thing, is like, I'm incredibly preventative based, which is like, what is something that you can do now that will have an effect in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. And so that kind of evolved my entire conversation in naturopathic medicine. And I don't really live by the idea that it's this label. I live by the idea of like, what are the tiny things that we can do on a day-to-day basis that have these incremental effects on our health. And as odd as this is going to say, and it sounds so weird every time I say it, but like, the end goal of life is death. right? Like there is no end goal, right? Because everybody's like so used to like achieving this goal, and then you achieve this goal, and then our automatic assumption is like, okay, what's next? And I'm like, there is no what's next when it comes to like how we live. Like when we have achieved our goal, we have hopefully lived long and died short. And so I was like, it's not actually about this A+ or getting like the perfect blood work or having somebody say, hey, good job, you ran a marathon. I was like, it's not actually about that. It's, I want to still go like climb mountains and vineyards in Italy when I'm 85. And I'm like, so what do I need to do now to be able to do that? And that is how I approach so much of what I get to do on a day-to-day basis. I think I have a pretty cool job that I get to have those conversations with so many people on a day-to-day basis. But like, I fundamentally believe that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Which is pretty cool, because I think a lot of people get to the age of like 70, 75 and then go, oh shit. Like,
right?
I've got however many good years left and I'm hurting, or I'm not,
Sure,
and
Yeah.
and haven't done some of the preventative stuff maybe.
Yeah. And I will,
Or 45.
Or
or
45.
45. Right? Perimenopause is
Yeah.
kind of a bitch.
Oh, menopause
Yeah.
is hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, right, like we go through so many of
Yeah.
these ups and downs, and I'm like, but like, so this is also how medicine evolves. And I get to sit here in 2024 and say this, being like, we have some of this research that we didn't have. Like our parents' generations could not have made a different choice because they made the best choice with what they had available at the time that they made it, unless they were like on the outskirts of that conversation. But like, in 2024, we have 20 years of data saying like, okay, here are the things that make a difference. We have 15 years of data. It's a different conversation than it was in the 1990s.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, I know going through menopause, I was upset with my mom, and I had this conversation with her. I'm like, why? You didn't tell me any of this.
She didn't know.
You didn't. And she goes, I didn't know. And people
Mhm.
didn't talk about it. And thankfully, we're in a situation now where more people are talking about our
Yeah.
health, and more people are talking about our mental health,
Mhm.
which in many ways is more important because it affects our physical health,
Very much
in
so.
so many ways. Yeah. So we're going
That's
to
my
talk.
story.
What's that?
That's my story.
It's a good story.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Was that the long or the short?
That was a short.
Okay.
Cape Breton blood. That was very
That was
short.
the short. All right. Curious, we'll talk about some of your clients, your patients in a moment about imposter syndrome, but I want to know you personally.
Mhm.
How has imposter syndrome affected you, both personally and professionally, really?
Oh, I am like the president of the recovering perfectionists.
Oh,
Oh,
are you a
like,
perfectionist?
oh, I
So-
am. No, recovering.
Recovering perfectionist
Perfectionists.
who primary focus is on how something is done, includes how the work is conducted and how it turns out. One minor flaw in an otherwise stellar performance of 99 out of 100 equals failure.
Recovering.
So you were like that. You were a perfectionist.
Oh, incredibly so. Like, so I went through, Helena and Alex sent me like the 4 different types of
Yes.
imposters before. And I was like, oh, I'm a pretty good blend between like superhuman and recovering perfectionist. I was like, definitely have a tendency towards those, which I will just categorize alongside Instagram and TikTok with like eldest daughter syndrome.
Oh, yes.
Oh, also eldest daughter.
Yeah.
Me too.
Also
Yeah.
eldest granddaughter too. So like got it on all fronts.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, yeah, that tracks. She is also the eldest daughter.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. And my grandmother is the eldest daughter. And like my great grandmother was the eldest daughter. So like those genes are very strong. But like, so I think it comes down to, so I say recovering because, so I have a very unique 9 to 5, because my 9 to 5 is split into segments of like 15, 30, 45 or hour-long times when I get to sit one-on-one with individuals, and I get to most of the time see them at their worst. right? Like I don't like, and I don't talk about this stuff on social. Like you don't get to see a ton of that side of things because, you know, patient privacy conversations.
Sure.
But I was like, I get to see upwards of 150 to 200 people over the course of a week who are moving through their own spaces. And most of the time they have found my office because you're like, I don't need somebody to tell me what to do. I need somebody to tell me, like, teach me how to determine what I need to do and what that looks like. And I think the coolest part of my job is that it gives me a reflective lens to actually understand what matters.
Ooh.
Because when we're talking like perfectionistic tendencies, which I will say I have in spades, and I will say in a way you kind of want your doctor to have slight perfectionistic tendencies.
Yes.
So I'm like,
Good
you
point,
kind
yeah.
of want, there's an element of that. You also want your doc to think of like 10, 20, 30 different things and be like, oh, we need to rule these things out. So I'm like, may or may not have chosen a job that aligned with those
Ooh.
tendencies
Ooh, good
slightly.
point, yeah.
But like, I get a chance to see in so many different lifestyles and so many different ways of how people live in families that are single parents and double parents and blended, and like partners that work away and then work at home, and how that changes the environment of what matters. I was like, I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't learn from that and learn how to give, I think, a whole lot more grace to myself. Because when I look back at like my 20s and my early 30s, I look back on that and I was like, oh, like you were trying to just control everything. Like you like kind of lived in that space that I think so many of us did, especially when we like were your like high achiever tendencies within school, at least I was, which is like, if I just get an A+ and like right through everything, and if I like do the volunteer work and I like show up and I babysit and X, Y, and Z, then I'll get it right. Right. And then I can control all of those conversations. And if I control all of those conversations, then nothing bad will happen.
Right.
And then like shit still hits the fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you're like, oh, I controlled all of the controllable factors and shit still hit the fan. So and I mean, like, there's a number of people in this room right now who can say like, yeah, you say that a lot of like, I think over the last 5 years, I will say I have practiced grace more than anything else, and grace for myself, grace for like the humans that are in my like very core life, grace for my patients, and recognizing like there are elements out of all of our controls, and trying to define what healthy is requires a lot of grace. And that's where I'm sitting currently. It's like a treading water conversation, but I'm like treading water, but there's a noodle beside me and it's warm out and I got a sun hat. And, like I've got sunscreen on, and I'm like, okay, like I can tread water. We're okay. Starting practice, finishing out school, like all of the ups and downs that happened in that period of my life, I was treading water in like what I like to call like stage 4 burnout, which is like nor'easter, North Atlantic. Like, I'm like, there's a very different feeling of treading water in that space than there is treading water in like a lake. And I'm like, yeah, so it's still treading water, but I'm like, I'm in a lake. And I'm like, we can work through this. We can give grace.
What,
but like,
how do you,
learning?
so giving yourself grace, so that would be your main tip probably on allowing yourself to push through it and like just sit back and be okay with it?
Not quite, actually. So not pushing through it, but also not sitting back and letting it happen, recognizing like, where are the areas that I can take a little bit of a sidestep and go, can I find a little bit of steadiness? And then maybe not, but I didn't take my full weight off the other foot, so I can just step back.
Yeah.
And like recognizing like there's another, like almost like a salsa, right? Like, I'm like, there's a little bit of a dance that happens. And what I now find actually really fun is, what does that dance look like? Right? Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? And maybe it's not about actually getting there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about like, I don't know, sometimes it's a tango and sometimes like it's a drag across the floor.
Yeah. You are doing an awful lot of things. So I can see the Superwoman in there big time.
Oh yeah.
You're a stepmom of 2 active kids.
Very.
You are about to have a wedding.
Yep.
you're running a business, you've got the
Couple.
Superwoman Code, couple businesses, you've got the podcast. Who's
Yeah, but I don't do it by myself.
yeah, so that's the point. Who's helping you with this? Because you can't do it alone.
Oh my
We-
goodness.
you need your community. So who's helping you?
Oh, like there's so we have a team within Cornerstone that I will say we've created some really good systems. So like a lot, like I basically get to sit in the space of Cornerstone at this point and see my patients. Right? Like I don't actually have to worry a ton about the admin because we have a team for that and we have systems for that. So like people are like, oh, like what's your tax structure? And I'm like, or whatever it is. And I'm like, that is not my job. I was
Yeah.
like, that is not my job. I go through them as I need to, but I was like, that's not my job. So like we've offloaded in that area. Ben and I will say very much share parenting, very 50-50. We also only have our kids at our house 50% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a difference. And I am very open about saying like, they are my stepkids. I love them to death. I have them 50% of the time in a space that I control. It took me probably a good couple of years to recognize and give grace on that point and be like, okay, right. Like just let it go. But like that gives space to fill in with other places, right? I don't have to parent 100% of the time. There's a massive difference there in terms of where my energy capacity can go.
Yeah.
And then my mom is my sounding rock. Like I've got my like girls and my humans, but like, my God, I call my mom every day.
Do you?
I get a check-in. Like between like, there's a 5-minute drive from our house to the clinic. And like, I call her when I get in the car. I get the updates. She is also the eldest daughter. We go through the eldest daughter things of like, what do we need to know? Who's where? What's going on? What support does she need? What support do I need? And like, they're my humans.
That's awesome.
But I'm going to add to this.
Yeah.
Ben and I are also incredibly strategic about how many things we add into our schedule. So we have what we call white space. And white space is a zeroed out percentage of our schedules that there is nothing allowed to be booked in.
Oh, I
Oh.
like that.
And
So
what percent does that usually take up?
30%.
30%.
30%.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Tell us how that works.
So we strategically made it 30% because you're like, if you make it 10, it's not going to work. If you make it 20, you're going to be constantly in this push and pull. But if you make it 30, then we were looking at like, what available weeknights would you want where the kids didn't have activities and how much of a weekend? Because we were like, I was like, I can't do 6 hockey games on a weekend. I was like, that doesn't work for the lifestyle that I would like to see. It works for other people's lifestyles. That's fine. That doesn't work for ours. So we strategically put a like 30% white space, which makes us question, okay, so if we're going to add this in, is it worth taking something out in order to keep that 30% white? And so what it allows us to do is basically do this little salsa. Once again, apparently we're in a dance mood tonight of like, we have to think before we make that choice.
I like that.
And otherwise we were like, it would be so easy to have Monday through Friday, have an activity every single night. And like, our kids are still in elementary school. Okay. So like,
Yeah.
I'm sure it will change and we'll probably have a discussion as they get older and things change. But like, it would be so easy to have that be every single night there was something that we were going to. And then every weekend there were multiple things. And we were like, we own businesses. We have that conversation. There are triage conversations that we have in place for patients, which is like I was in the office last Sunday because like it hit my triage point and I was like, cool, I'll see you at like 9 a.m. It's Sunday morning. They were like, it's Sunday. And I was like, yep, cool. Like there's a continuity of care piece within like the healthcare realm that we were like, we need the flexibility for that. So we have a 30% white space.
That's cool. Cause I mean, I stuffed my calendar and then couldn't understand why I was so tired all the time.
Right?
And everything was color coded and looked beautiful and was all arranged.
Oh, it's
But there was
totally pretty.
there wasn't any white space. It was full.
There's no breathing room.
No breathing room.
Well, it's like budgeting your finances, but it's budgeting your time.
I
Like we
happy with
have
that
like a
too.
whole cash flow system
Yeah.
so that we can make informed decisions about spending. And it's sort of the same thing. You're making informed decisions about time. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, that's pretty
Feel
cool.
free to
Who's
use.
gonna do that? Anybody gonna go take a look at some white space on their
Oh,
calendar? Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But then everybody else is like, oh, that would require a thought pattern that I don't know if I'm ready to have
I
right now.
know. Well, that does involve some
Discipline.
It,
and setting some boundaries.
it also involves space to reflect,
Mm.
right? Is this serving? Is this not serving? Does this make sense? And I mean, like, I know you have probably a pile of questions about burnout, but like sometimes, and I will say this to patients, like sometimes like you're going to enter a space where you're going to burn out.
Yeah.
And people are like, what? And I'm like, no, like you're going to enter a space where you're going to burn out at some point. The question is it worth it? Right? Like, do you see that outcome? And then have you created recovery space on the other side? Because I'm like, if we all sat back
Did you
and
say recovery space?
right, recovery space.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
Like sometimes you're going to go into burnout and it's perfectly okay. And it's expected at certain points of your life or career, no matter what it is, like you are going to hit this element of burnout. And so it's okay to do that. It's okay to enter that space. It's just you need to have the recovery time on the other side, which is generally what we forget about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because we're just ready to go to the next thing. It's like, okay, we're past that thing now.
What's next?
What's next? I've got another project to do or another,
Yeah.
something I put off. Let's get going.
Yeah. And then you keep doing that and doing that and doing that. And then all of a sudden you can't do it anymore. So then you're like, well, I quit, or your body quits, or both.
Yeah, I did both.
And then you're like, I did too much. And I will argue, so sometimes yes, but I will argue that from what I see, that happens 20% of the time. The other 80%, you actually just didn't recover enough. That's a very simplified statement,
Well,
by the
for
way.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're all on the same page.
You're an incredibly positive person. I mean, I've spent a lot of time at Cornerstone, and you always like step into the room and you're like, hi friend, and you say hi friend to everybody that's there. Like you're this incredibly positive person,
Thank you.
but there's gotta be negative thoughts that are jumping in your head.
Oh, 100%.
How are you knocking them down? How do you get rid of those?
I don't know if I necessarily get rid of them.
Ooh.
Like I try to, so I have a really close girlfriend. Her name's Ange Cooper. Actually, Alicia introduced me to her. She's an amazing psychologist. And she stated once, and has stated to me a couple of times, she was like, you can either pretend that that doesn't exist, or you can welcome that feeling along your journey with you. And you can say, hey, like, you don't get to determine where we're going, but like, you're welcome to walk along this path with me if you wish. And so I probably, because I'm like, I don't have fucking time to deal with this, I'm just like, you are welcome
There's the
to
F-bomb.
join.
Every single
Every
stop for a
time.
second, because every single podcast, our guest has dropped the F-bomb.
I know. I always have to click
So
the
we'll just-
explicit content.
We have to
There
click
it
off
is.
explicit content on everyone. There it is. We're happy with it. We're good. Yeah.
Welcome it.
We welcome it.
I didn't ask that question actually before we chatted.
Oh, yeah,
Like
no, we're,
whether
yeah.
or not I could swear.
Yeah, we're totally good.
It adds a point, to a
Passion.
statement.
Passion.
Yeah.
Passion.
But
Yes.
I'm like,
It's not vulgar.
I was like, I have enough things going on in my life that I could spend a ton of time trying to delete or trying to resolve things that actually I have no control over the resolve of. I was like, I have control over my own feelings of, but I don't necessarily have control over what that kind of conversation is going to look like. And so a lot of times I'm like, listen, I was like, you're welcome to come along for this walk with me. You're not going to control the conversation. It's there. Do I keep myself up at night kind of twiddling through my brain of like, oh, I wish I had done this, or I wish I had done this, or like going back in time, I wish I had had this conversation, and like, oh, I haven't like thought about that in a while. Like I could ruminate my way to like a gold medal,
Me too.
like
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, so I think that is part of my recovering perfectionistic conversation, is that I am actively trying to not let that rumination take over. But I learned in my teens that trying to shove that feeling down doesn't work. And I was like, I look back on this and people are like, how do you have your life together? And I'm like, well, A, I don't. B, I have a lot of help. C, like, there's a lot of credit that I give to my parents of going like, oh, like we're going to actually support you through this, right? Like I had like grew up in the 90s. Like my parents would be like, okay, like we're going to talk about this. Here's how you talk through this. Here's ways that you kind of process through, not just like shove it down and not just be like, oh no, those are no anxious feelings. And I'm like, no, those are anxious feelings. Say hi to the anxiety and then go, how can we do this with you?
Ooh.
Right? Like,
So growing up in the 60s is different.
yeah, just so we're all on the same page. I am a 90s baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I raised a 90s baby.
Yeah.
I was a 90s teen.
You were 90s teen?
We've got the whole,
Yeah, the whole
whole
gamut
spectrum.
here. You have a huge focus on burnout. You started
Yes.
talking about burnout, huge focus on burnout. And I think everybody in this room can say that at some point it has touched their lives. What inspired you to specifically focus on burnout in women? You burnt out?
Oh, I burnt out. Absolutely. Eldest daughter, when I was
Yeah.
licensing and board exams took it out of me.
Oh,
Right? Like, so everybody in medicine in some way, shape, or form does a licensing or a board exam. Naturopathic doctors do 2+, and then there are like OSCEs, and which are kind of physical exams on top of it. And so in the last year, there is exam after exam after exam, and these are like licensing exams, right? So these are not just like at the school, this is like they're national, and in naturopathic medicine they're actually North American standardized. So they're like, they run twice a year. You don't really want to fail.
ooh. Yeah.
The pressure is high, and so I 100% burnt myself out at the end of undergrad. I 100% burnt myself out at the end of kind of naturopathic medicine. I burnt myself out 2 years into practice, and then I sat down with myself and I had a very good bottle of red wine and said, okay, this cannot become a pattern. I was like, because if this becomes a pattern, I can't do this. I was like, I can't sit here and be here for patients and kind of be that mirror, but also not take on all of that. I was like, I cannot do this.
What are the signs of burnout? Like, what should we be looking for, I
Oh.
guess? Yeah.
So strategically speaking, and medically speaking, it's a triad. So it is depressive symptoms. So like low mood, low energy. Then there is like an apathetic kind of conversation towards life. And then there is actually a reduction in output, right? So you actually just achieve less. And so all three of those are kind of part of that burnout triad. Burnout's been studied since the 70s. Like Bob Dylan talked about it in his music. Like this is not a new thing. And so when we really start to look at burnout though, from like not just say like, do you check the boxes, but like how does it feel? It feels like you can get a good enough sleep and wake up and want to go back to bed. Right? Like it feels like you're just walking through the day, feeling like you're kind of just floating through and checking the boxes and being like, I'm doing what I just need to do to be done. And then you get home and you doom scroll because you're just like, I just need some sort of dopamine hit. It's crashing out at the end of the day. It's getting a second wind before bed, right? Like you're exhausted. And then like you climb into bed, do your whole facial routine. And then you're like, I'm awake, right? And then we like layer perimenopause and menopause on top of that. And I mean, like, there's so much more to burnout than just those things, but that's kind of that feeling that starts to kind of encompass the like, are you burnt out? And we're like, okay, so yes, but also how much recovery capacity do you have? How much output capacity do you have? So I tend to think about burnout very much in line with your cash flow conversation, like a bank account, right? Any accountants in the room? You know, no, you want to know why?
Don't have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
No, it's April.
It's April. That's right. It's April.
It's April.
Yeah.
Every single accountant is fully burnt out right now. That's why there's nobody here.
Yeah.
Because it's April. It's tax season. And so like I think about like burnout very much on a bank account conversation because I think it gives us that flexibility to recognize that there's ups and downs within this. And it's not so much like what the number in your bank account is on a day-to-day. It's like, what does that trend actually look like? So in a very simple form, we have withdrawals and deposits, right? So like energy comes into our bank account and energy leaves our bank account. And we can start our bank account in like savings and investings mode, which is, to your point, when we think about achieving goals, like we achieve this goal and then our automatic reaction is like, okay, what next? We're not allowing ourselves that space to sit in that savings and investing mode, right? Like we're not allowing that ourselves to sit in that space of like, oh, maybe I should just like not spend a ton of money right now. And I should just like let my bank account build up. Every entrepreneur being like, that's funny. Right. And I'm the same way because I'm like, yeah, no, that's funny right now. Right. So perfect world. And then you dip into like what I call the paycheck to paycheck conversation, which is like there's just enough energy to go out like for what's going out. But like if you hit a pothole on the 103 right now, like you're done. There's strategy getting through the 103 right now. But like, right. So like there's just enough coming in to go out. And so you're like, okay, if everything falls in line, if my calendar stays perfectly the way that it is, if nothing gets dumped in last minute, if a kid doesn't get sick, right? That's like my fear every single time. And it's like, do I have childcare if a kid decides to vomit at 2 a.m. in the morning? Janet. That's my mom. Retired.
Yeah.
Thank God. Okay. So that's the paycheck to paycheck conversation. But you could be a paycheck to paycheck and then all of a sudden, like your Nova Scotia power bill, your property tax bill, and like your grocery bill all happened on the same day. And you're like, crap, right? Like you had everything lined up, but they all just happened at once, not out of choice, but out of just necessity or need. And then all of a sudden that dumps you into overdraft. And if you have like a little bit of buffer, then you're like, okay, cool. We can work our way through this. We'll like take it easy for a minute. We'll figure out what we need to do. We'll adjust. We'll move ourselves back up. But when you hit overdraft again and again and again, we're like, okay, this pattern is going in the wrong direction until eventually you hit what I like to call collections. Right? Everybody's like, we all have bank accounts. It's like such an easy way to think about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? And so like collections mode is like, if you're in collections and you're in my office, like we're having a conversation about like, do you need to be off on stress leave? Right? Like that is the level of collections. And every single woman, because I treat 99.9% women, every single woman or somebody who identifies as a woman in my office who is in collections is a freaking fight.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you need to consider that there is not enough capacity. And I am suggesting medically that you need to consider stress leave. And they're like, no, I can't. I can't leave my team. I can't do that to somebody else. For anybody who's a teacher, it's very much like, I can't do that to my kids, right? Which is exactly why we kind of got into collections in the first place. So like, it's not just a like, oh, I want to go off. It's like, I am doing everything I can to make it through the day. It is like, it takes, and I don't know if anybody else has ever felt this, but the energy that it takes to just get out of bed and brush your hair, you're like, I won. Like that was like gold medal right there. And that is what stage 4 burnout feels like. It's like getting out of bed, putting on like leggings and brushing your hair feels like you won. Yeah. Most of the time, the majority of us hover in that paycheck to paycheck realm. It's just how much of a buffer do we have?
It's a great way to look at it, right? Like I've never thought about the way I live and my life, all of that. I have never thought of that as deposits and investments and withdrawal. Yeah, I've never thought of that. Yeah, it's neat. It's a neat
extremely relatable. And I think a lot of people in this room are entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of truth there to always wanting to be producing more, or feeling that your worth is somehow tied to that.
Yeah.
Similarly with parenting. So I think it's a really interesting analogy and one that's, visual. So I like that.
I also like, and I will say it's why I've kind of kept with that analogy for a lot of patients and myself included. Like Ben and I get home at the end of the day, you're like, what's your capacity? Like, how much capacity do you have right now? How do we need to be adjusting? Because like we go into our days, like, and I've had days where I get the chance to have a lot of fertility conversations with patients and I can have like, let's say I've got 5 fertility kind of conversations on one day, 3 or 4 of those could be a miscarriage conversation that I don't know about until I get into that space. That's going to define my capacity at the end of the day because those are heavy conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they're just, so I could go into the day being like, I'm okay. Like I'm at 90% capacity. I've got buffer. And then I could get hit with like one after the other of just going like, these are really important conversations that I need to be absolutely fully present through, because this is a really, really tough moment for the person sitting in front of me. And like, God knows we get enough of a like, felt like I didn't get cared. I'm like, I'm not going to ever intentionally do that to a human, because I'm like human to human. So, but like, and I've had days like that, and I've had probably more days than is easy to talk about like that. And it completely tanks me by the end of the day. And I sit there and like, it should tank me by the end of the day. Like days like that, I shouldn't feel like rainbows and butterflies at the end of the day, because then it means I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I can walk out of the office and be like, oh yeah, like no big deal. I'm like, no, it means I don't care. And that's kind of not the reason I got into medicine in the first place. So like Ben and I have a check-in on our way home of going like, how much capacity do you have? Right? Like, where are you standing? What do we need to adjust with? And we have like pulled days where like, I had a day like that. He didn't. Great. He does supper and bedtime and this and that. And it's not a like, oh, snap. It's like, no, this is just what we're doing. We've had days where both of us get hit like that, and we literally pick up takeout on the way home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like it's a rotisserie chicken and a bag of salad, because you're like, that is not where my capacity needs to be right now.
I like that check-in though. I like that you have, when there's a support, that you can really rally off one another and really check in with each other, and you need that.
So I want to say like, it feels really lucky, but I also would like to say like, I feel like that's some kind of sometimes like a bullshit line. I'm like, oh, I'm just lucky. And I'm like, no, that took a ton of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like that took like years of figuring out what worked for the two of us and what language worked, and test driving it. And I mean, like, we're both just humans who like to think and like to create and like to try different things out. So like Ben will come back and be like, oh, I listened to this audiobook, like we should try this out. And I'm like, cool, let's try it. Let's see what works. And then we borrow pieces of what works and bring them into our life for like these test drives. And then if they work, then great. And if they don't, then you're like, all right, learn something that doesn't work.
Serving up hot brews, refreshing cold drinks, lots of fresh baked goodies, and delicious lunch options. Visit the Mellow Mug in the heart of Larry Utech for dine-in, takeout, or drive-through service. Their spacious cafe offers a casual and inviting vibe that's perfect for everything from enjoying a good book, hanging with friends, or meeting a colleague. The Mellow Mug is your neighborhood spot for great coffee and delicious eats and sweets. How prevalent is burnout with businesswomen, with entrepreneurs?
Like on a day-to-day basis, or like on a bank account?
Yeah, either. Yeah.
Like, so I will always sit here and be like, if you are an entrepreneur, or if you're in politics, or if you're in a service-based industry, like if you are in any space where you have to interact with another human on a day-to-day basis, or if you're in like in the entrepreneurial world, you're going to be burnt out at some point. There is no way around it. And you can be burnt out for 10 weeks and be totally fine. Okay, 10.
What happens at 11?
You crash, but like you crash, right? Because when you hit those initial stages of burnout, you actually just run on adrenaline, which is that fight or flight response. And it's that I can get through and I can do this and I can do this. And you're like, yeah, you can. Absolutely. But when you run away from a bear in the woods, you're supposed to run away, get to safety, and then recover. Right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we don't account for the time that it takes to recover. And so what happens is we run on adrenaline and we run on adrenaline and we run on adrenaline and we run on adrenaline. And our body is like, hey, like, could you eat something? Or like, hey, like, could you maybe go to bed? Or, hey, could you book an appointment with your doctor? Because I think your iron's really low because you've like bled out from your period every month for the last 12 months. And like, I'm a little dizzy when I stand up.
Okay, but here's my problem with this, because I hear everything you're saying. But
like,
sometimes a crisis, yes.
Exactly.
So sometimes a crisis hits.
Yes.
Right? So we're weeks dealing with the crisis.
Yep.
The crisis is now over.
But then
and
you still have to
weeks, but you can't recover because you just spent weeks away from your work or your kids or your whatever.
Yep.
So to take a week to recover is awfully hard when you're like, oh God, there's so much to do. You just want to do.
But that depends on how you define recovery.
So what is recovery then?
So recovery is not doing nothing.
Okay.
Recovery is engaging.
Recovery to me is like getting in bed.
No.
Jamming time. Like
No.
I'm on vacation in my
No.
bedroom. Like,
Recovery is not vacation.
oh,
And vacations are not actually vacation.
I hate this conversation.
It's like we define recovery the same way we define lazy,
Oh, yeah.
right? Which is I'm accomplishing nothing and I'm doing nothing. That's not recovery. Recovery is engaging in activities that add deposits to your bank account.
So going out with friends.
Getting out with friends,
Going out in
like
nature.
getting to nature, like maybe you set a like, okay, I'm just not going to be on my phone after 9 o'clock kind of conversation.
sure.
Could be a recovery mechanism. A lot of times your recovery mechanisms are things that we call your cornerstones. So sleep is one, but I will also say sleep is an incredibly variable one because a lot of times your sleep is actually not controlled by you,
Mhm.
right? Like we talk about like the screen conversation, but I'm like, in reality, it's tiny humans or teenage humans who are out until 2 a.m. And you're like, well, I'm not falling asleep until they're home, right? Both are equatable. It's hot flashes. It's things on our brain keeping us up and waking us up at 2 or 3 a.m. It's like I'm on call at 7 a.m. and I have to get up at 5. Like the sleep conversation is always, to me, a very grace-filled conversation because most of the time we're trying our best, right? Like a lot of times the things that impact that are very much out of our control.
Yeah.
And so then we've got food and fueling, right? Which to me is very much a like, what do you have access to? Right? It's not a home cooked turkey dinner every single Sunday. It's like, if your capacity is 20% at the end of the day, do you know what your decision already is? Right? Like, do you know I'm going into Superstore or Costco or Sobeys or wherever and picking up a rotisserie chicken and a bag of salad as opposed to going through the drive-thru,
Ooh.
right? Like that pre-made decision all of a sudden is a deposit. Then it's moving, right? But it's moving depending on like what your body needs. So like if you are in overdraft, training for a marathon is about the worst thing that you can absolutely do for your body. And CrossFit is an incredibly phenomenal thing that should generally only be done if you're in stage 1, right? Like savings and investing. CrossFit at collections mode, they don't go together because there's an adrenaline conversation to it, right? So like what does your body need in order to move? Because when your body can move, it builds energy. And when you can build energy in that spot, then you can add more energy back to your bank account, right? Like moving your body. Have you ever done the like, I feel like absolute crap? And then you go for that stupid walk for your stupid mental health, which I did like a couple of days ago. And Ben was like, why are you so grumpy right now? I was like, 'cause I'm going for a walk for my stupid mental health.
Super mental health.
And I was like, it'll feel so much better, but I don't want to do it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's connection. And I will sit here and be like, when we're really talking about burnout prevention, it's connection, and it's not connection over a screen,
No.
right? It's like, can you meet up with a girlfriend and go for a walk or grab a coffee? I will generally suggest we try and shy away from the alcohol conversations
What?
as I have a glass of red wine in front of me, because, you know, it can impact sleep,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Right. So like, it's how do you connect with people? So like when I get a chance to work, and I work with some seriously cool women and like see like crazy loads, and they're like, what do I need to do? And I was like, can you make one of your lunches that you go on this week, because you do a lunch Monday through Thursday and you work from home on Friday, can you make it with a friend as opposed to a business lunch? And I'm like, you just need a connection with another human. And I only have 2 rules with connections: is it cannot be somebody that you work with, and it cannot be somebody that you live with.
Mm.
Okay. You need a connection with humans that are outside of that space. But recovery is not about doing nothing, which is what we think it is. Recovery is about putting the plug into things that actually add deposits into our life.
Okay. I'm going to try some of that. Because honestly, I get to a point that I'm just like on the couch, screw off.
10 years ago, I would be like, well, if I can't make it to the gym for an hour for this particular class on this Tuesday night, then I'm not going, right?
Mm.
Now it's like, okay, first I can insert here, right? I can walk up and down my driveway 5 times. Literally There were like saucer eyes that just happened in the audience where people were like, what? And I'm like, no, walk up and down the driveway 5 times, right? Maybe I can lie on a yoga mat for an hour. Maybe I can like just read my book in frog position, right? And just stretch my hips.
Oh, good.
And then I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get out of that.
Stuck in frog for a week. Leave my
But, like,
phone with me.
First I will,
Yes.
then I will. Right? First I'll go for a walk, then I'll close my computer down and veg out on the couch.
Yeah, that's a great balance. That's great. What, yeah, that's
Just like so dismissive of us. We do it together because we work together. So
But we can't, that's right.
our coffees don't
But this
count.
is the thing, but our coffees do
But
count.
your coffees do count.
There are coffees like are my life.
Because you actually don't work,
Yes.
like you don't work in a 9 to 5 together. Like
No,
I'm talking like when I'm
Yeah,
saying
we
work
actually
together,
barely work.
it's like
Barely.
you basically just don't want to spend time with the people that you're already connected to,
Yes.
right? Like you need like that spider web of like you need it to go out because you need to see different humans. You need to hear different stories. You need to recognize, because a lot of times when you get outside of your little circle, you realize that we're actually all kind of going through the same thing. And there's in something so inherently like breathworthy of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think we love this podcast so much, is because so
100%.
many people are feeling the same things and we don't realize it until we're all having the same conversation
Mhm.
in one way or another. And some of the variables are different, but ultimately the themes are the same.
Yeah, the
Oh, yeah.
themes are all the same. We're all going through the same stuff. We're all feeling exactly the same. We're all tired. We're all burned out. Like
So we're all ships
we're all, yeah.
in the same harbor or in the same ocean or whatever you want to think about it. And like my grandfather was a sailor. And so like I grew up being very comfortable on a very unsteady surface. So maybe that says a lot right there. Literally the moments in my life. But like we are all in the same harbor or in the same oceans, but we're all different ships. Right? Like some people are in like what I like to call the Jack Sparrow ship.
The submarine.
Right? Where it's like slowly, like he's standing on the top and he's like slowly sliding into the bay and then just
Yeah.
walks off the mats, right? Like there's some Jack Sparrow ships out there. There are some absolute tankers, right? They're
You're right.
probably, but like we got a couple Theodores in there, and then we've got a couple of
Yeah.
like other
I'm
your
a
Theodores,
submarine.
but like
I'm
Sarah's a
totally under
Theodore.
the water.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
all in a slightly different environment, but
Yeah.
we're in the same environment at the same time.
That's very true. Talk to me about, because
Hold on. I just want to
okay, yes.
acknowledge these analogies because they are like
they're pretty
top
really
fucking tier.
good. Yeah,
Top tier analogies.
yeah.
You know what? You want to know who actually taught me how to do really good analogies? Like actually taught me? Great Ivany.
Oh, really?
Actually taught me, like sat me down for coffee one day at Acadia. And he was like, because I was like, okay, the Rayisms, like how do these, how? And here's a strategy for them.
Really?
And then he thinks it through. And I'm just like, oh, anyway, so that is like one of my core memories is like this coffee date with Ray.
Well, it
Yeah.
paid off in spades. Like my husband also is very good at analogies. So I kind of have a soft spot for them, but I think there's a real science to a good analogy.
Thank you.
And I think you're killing them. So
Yeah, good job.
that's
I-
it.
I will
That's
give-
my one input to this conversation. Continue.
You want to
Continue.
switch spots?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm just here for the one-liners.
One of the ways to combat imposter syndrome is to actually listen to how awesome the people in your life think you are. If you're looking for the perfect gift for a loved one, where you can tell them all of the things that make them special, visit my Drawbridge Creative Etsy shop and purchase a Things We Love About You custom poster. With several styles to choose from, it's a fabulous gift for any milestone birthday, anniversary, retirement, or just because. Talk to me about burnout in relation to imposter syndrome. Because you have to have women that are sitting in front of you
Mhm.
saying, I feel like I'm failing, I feel like a fraud, I feel like I'm gonna get found out any minute, whatever, all the things that we say to each other as, say as imposters in our heads.
Yep.
So how does imposter syndrome contribute to burnout?
Oh, it's guilt.
Guilt.
Shame, yeah.
Guilt and
Shame.
shame of like, I'm not doing enough, right? I'm not living up to enough. It's chasing that A plus, but there's no A plus. There's also no F, right? Like in this whole conversation, like the imposter syndrome conversation within like a very medical base, within like a burnout conversation is very much the driver of guilt. which is I'm not showing up, right? I feel like I'm failing mostly other people, by the way, right? I'm failing my kids. I'm failing my partner, right? Like one of those core things that happens with burnout as you get later and later is you're like, you don't want to have sex because you're like, I don't fucking care. Like,
Well, so I don't have burnout.
right? Like core down, right? Because you're so
You're also not married.
Oh,
like, great. But like the amount of conversations I have in my office of like, I feel so bad for my partner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And that's how that conversation starts. And I feel very honored that conversation is very much able to happen because it is an incredibly important conversation from a physiological sense. But like, it never starts with like, oh, I want this more. It always starts with like, I feel really bad for my partner. And I'm like, okay, like there's that guilt, right? And then like, you're so exhausted at the end of the day that like, you don't have the capacity to spend time with your kids in a way that you really want to. And you feel like you're just screaming at them the whole entire time because you're just so tapped out, right? Like, it's like, that's that like feeling like you can't do it, feeling like you're not good enough. So that if I just like do all of the things perfectly and line up my calendar and like control as many variables as I can, then it will be fine. And I'm like, it's just guilt. And guilt, I find so interesting because guilt is not like, it's not an individual emotion. It's an emotion that we think somebody else places upon us, right? Like it's not ours. It's this expectation from the external that we feel like we're not living up to. At least that's how I have always defined guilt within my life and my practice. It's like, it's very much an external conversation as opposed to an internal conversation. But I'm at the point in my life, it sounds like I'm wise beyond my years, and I promise you I'm very much not.
Wise.
But like, I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, if I feel those feelings of guilt now, I can pause and I can go, oh, what's not aligned? Right? Like, what isn't aligned right now? And sometimes the alignment conversations, you're like, that's not aligned and that's not going to change, right? That's not changing anytime soon. This is going to be here for the next 6 months or a year. Like, right? Maybe you're in a job that you don't love and maybe you're making kind of changes to work towards that, but you're like, this isn't aligned. And you're like, well, yeah, it's not, but don't quit your job right now. Like, work towards building in a plan so that it does become aligned. So that moment of alignment can sound incredibly privileged if you don't recognize that it's just a cue to start asking more questions, right? To be like, what needs to shift? What other questions do I need to start to ask myself? And that's where, to me, that idea of grace really comes in.
We strongly believe in giving yourself grace as well. We believe a lot in community, surrounding yourself with good people, speaking up, all of these sorts of things to kind of push yourself through imposter. But yeah, I was kind of very curious about how you thought it would relate to
A lot of expectations that are. Guilt is an incredibly good driver because it's an adrenaline driver, right? You can go back in history and you can find a whole lot of conversations about how guilt has become a driver. It is an incredibly quick driver. It is a driver that actually doesn't take a lot of energy from the person driving it. It's very easy to kind of make a statement or make an expectation, and then like, it doesn't actually affect that external being. It is an adrenaline driver. And when we're talking about burnout, one of my jobs within burnout is to start to piece together where those elements of an environment are that create adrenaline. And sometimes we're like, ooh, that's a good one, right? We want to keep that. That's there for the right reason. So now how do we support it? And then other ones we're like, okay, how do we start to shift that conversation we have with ourselves so that that isn't an adrenaline driver?
What advice do you have for women who are experiencing burnout, but are hesitant to seek help?
Can I change your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I actually don't think people are hesitant to seek help.
Okay.
I think people are too inundated with an idea of what help should look like, and it becomes overwhelming. And then you get stuck in this stall response, this freeze response, because you don't actually know what fits your environment anymore. If I'm going to introduce something into my life, there's not enough time. I'm feeling squeezed already. This has to work because I can't afford for it not to work. Right? So like TikTok and social media and Instagram and mom groups and dad groups and like all of those fun things. Everybody has a story of a friend that tried this and it worked. But the bigger question is, how do I start to ask really good questions about, does this fit my environment? And is this something that I need? And B, how do we create the space where we feel comfortable test driving things? Where we feel comfortable being like, oh, I don't know if this is really going to work short term, but like, let's define this and let's switch. To back up even further, requires you to not be running on adrenaline to have that conversation in the first place. But like, let's make a space where we can test drive this, right? So mornings were chaos in our house. Like I hate, like at the deepest core of my body, being rushed. I hate running late and I hate being rushed. And if I have ever run late for an appointment with somebody else in this room, you will know that I come out and I'm like, thank you so much for your patience. And like, I don't like showing up late for people. I also don't like being rushed. And so being rushed in the morning, getting 2 kids onto a bus is like this perfect setup for me to then be rushed at the office, which means then I feel like I'm playing catch up all day. And then I feel like I'm not giving my best to the people sitting in front of me, who most of the time have waited to get into my office. And I'm like, I don't think that's fair, personally. So like Ben and I started testing out these like different things that we would do at different parts of our day with the goal of how do we offload in the morning? And like one of the simplest ones that we ever came up with, which was, why don't we just buy a second bento box for each kid?
So that's right. So you're not rushing to get it cleaned.
So
right? Yeah.
exactly. So it was this thing of like, and it sounds like so goddamn simplistic when you say it out loud, right?
Yeah.
Like ridiculously simplistic. That the hang up for us was that the kids would come home from school, they would empty their lunch boxes, they would put it into the dishwasher. Cause I'm just like, we have a dishwasher. It's cool. Like, let's do it. Right. But we wouldn't run that dishwasher until after supper, because like, why would you run a half done dishwasher? That doesn't make sense. Brain. The dishwasher would go until like 7:30. And at 7:30, 8 o'clock, I don't want to make lunch. Right? Like I want to sit on the couch and I want to scroll my phone and I want to like maybe do a little embroidery because I'm a grandma and like grandma cottage core is like, that is my vibe. Okay. That is what I'm aiming for. So then what would happen is we would get stuck in this scramble in the morning. So then Ben and I were like, oh, we'll test drive a couple of things. And so the simplest version that we came down with was literally buy a second bento box for each kid. And then we would actually be making their lunches when we were making supper. So everything was already out. The kitchen was already slightly messy. Like the cutting board was already used. And it sounds crazy when you say it out loud, but you're like, no, it's a thing, right? It's a thing. Anybody who doesn't have kids is like, this is not a thing. And I'm like, it's a thing. It's a thing.
I have not related to anything more.
Yeah. So like it was the second bento box. And all of a sudden the second bento box meant that at 6 o'clock, the lunches for the next day were in the fridge. And like all of a sudden, it wasn't this 20-minute scramble in the morning to get them out the door. And I was like, oh my God, it was the $13 bento box times 2 that actually saved me so much capacity. We tried out 5 different things before we got to that. That was our Hail Mary.
I chose tonight to really focus on talking about burnout with you. However, you can do an entire, what we just did over the last hour, conversation on hormones. But tonight we chose to focus on burnout, but we all have we can all list off ways that hormones have affected us emotionally, physically, mentally, whatnot. What's one thing that you could tell us that might surprise us?
Okay. I'm gonna like mic drop a conversation. And if I were to mic drop it on Instagram, there are a number of health influencers out there that would probably get mad at me for saying this, but I'm gonna say it. The number on your blood values of the hormones doesn't actually mean as much as you want it to mean. So women's brains are super cool, like really cool. And our brains, particularly the serotonin and dopamine in our brains, actually responds to our hormonal fluctuations. And most of the time, the hormone fluctuation that happens throughout a menstrual cycle, how it affects our body actually has less to do with the hormone, the amount of hormone in our bloodstream, and more to do with how our brain responds to that biochemical change. And so a lot of times when I get this conversation all the time, people are like, I want to test my hormones. I want to know where they're at. And I do this like break on the wheel to be like, what do you want to learn from that conversation? Because there are 1.5 million tests out there that you can pay $400 to $600 to do that probably won't tell you as much as you want them to, because hormone fluctuations are so unbelievably variable throughout the day that your better option is like a free period tracker app. And I will totally pounce like MeVPMDD is an absolutely amazing one from a mental health perspective. I love Clue from just a like period perspective because they're German company and their privacy is like top notch. And I think that is a really important thing when it comes to your hormone load. But like, I wish I could sit here and be like, yeah, test your hormones. It'll tell you everything you need to know. It doesn't work that way. And that is one of the hardest things about working with women's health, is that most of the time when we're testing hormones, we're testing to rule out things, which means it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, as opposed to rule in things. So the more data that like you as an individual can bring into an appointment with your practitioner to be like, hey, I've noticed this pattern, that actually tells us more in terms of being able to figure out what support you need than like a really expensive test does.
I think in traditional medicine, that's just still not there, and I'm talking from personal experience because I've just gone through this, and I really love what you just said, because I have PMDD. I've had it for years, and I just had my hormones tested and they're like, you're fine, you're normal. I'm like, I'm definitely not normal. So I think that's really interesting and really useful because nobody is saying those things. They're just like, yeah, you're fine. Everything's good.
Yeah,
Like,
but then the conversation then becomes, now how sensitive are you to those changes? Right. Which is like, it's a further step of the conversation. But yeah, it's a really important thing to know. And I think it's undersaid a lot within the medical system. And I don't care if it's like naturopathic medicine or traditional medicine that you're seeing. I will give a ton of grace. Like primary care is slammed right now. Friends, like it is really hard to have those conversations because of just the nature of the world that we are living in this space. But like, yeah, like every single other medical condition can be diagnosed with blood test. And then women's health is like, psych, not,
Yeah.
except for a couple other cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I could talk to you about women's health forever, and I think people can listen for a long time. So there's 130 something podcasts out there.
Yeah. So the
In the
Superwoman Code.
Code that Ashley, you can get out, you can go in there and you can binge them all and find out so many amazing things. So what we want to do is the next step.
oh, sweet.
Go
Do I
ahead.
have to sing it?
Oh,
So-
sweet
Are we
God,
speed
you
rapping?
do. Alex sings the song.
It's a word. Speed round.
Speed
It's that song.
round. Yeah.
It's really embarrassing.
No, it's not.
I really like it.
Well, I won't.
All right. So
All
if
right.
you're not familiar with our podcast, we end every episode with 5 rapid fire questions. So we ask guests to try to answer them in one word. Sometimes that's not possible, but we'll do our best. All right. If you could have dinner with any fictional character, who would it be?
James Bond.
James Bond.
James Bond. Oh, so I went for the martini.
What are you most grateful for in the whole world?
Family.
What's the best gift you've ever received?
Ben has this habit, this is not a one-word answer, of booking things and then not telling me about them. So my 30th birthday, which was 2020, March 4th, 2020, okay? Just for timeline, for my 30th was a trip to London,
Oh, cool.
which obviously did not happen that year.
Oh, that's
For the next couple of years. And so we finally cashed it in 2022. And so this is a fun story with it, because this is the gift that now just keeps on giving. So we went to London, and his sister and brother-in-law, soon to be my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, and their 2 kids are over in London as well. So we got to see family, and it was, 2022. So like that was really important. But we accidentally booked the trip the weekend of the Queen's Jubilee.
Smart.
Didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so London was like decked out to beyond, like, it, to experience London at like the Jubilee was, I think, to experience London in a way that I will never experience again.
Mm.
And then the next year we went to Greece. Sounds so great. And we crossed over in London on the day of the King's coronation. So it's just like, now it's this gift that keeps giving, because we're like, oh, next time we end up in London, like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, really.
Not a one-word answer.
What is your favorite type of food?
Fresh from the garden.
Mm.
As fresh as
I
it
like
can
that
get.
answer.
I feel like I know the answer to this one, but if you could have any job in the world, what would it be?
This one, I really like my
I
job.
love that. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I love having these conversations. Thank you, Ashley,
You're so
for
welcome.
joining us.
So
Totally,
welcome.
totally loved the conversation.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Imposter Sisters. Please remember, we're not doctors or mental health experts. If you're looking for mental health guidance, please see our show notes for local resources. We'd like to thank our location sponsor, the Mellow Mug, located at 64 Delridge Lane, for donating this amazing space for us to have these important chats and for supplying us with drinks and goodies. Please give them a follow and make sure to stop in to see this beautiful spot for yourself. Until next time, keep your head high and we will see you next Tuesday.